The crowd erupts with laughter. Under the harsh illumination of studio lights, broadcast live to millions, the presenter, renowned for her cutting remarks and confrontational style, challenges Leonardo DiCaprio's spiritual convictions. With an expression of smug superiority, she inquires, "Leonardo, after everything life has thrown at you, do you genuinely believe someone watches over you from above?" More laughter cascades through the studio. The camera shifts its focus. Leonardo remains composed in silence. His fingers lightly touch the small cross pendant hanging around his neck. His gaze stays tranquil, unwavering, undisturbed. He offers no rebuttal. He presents no argument. He simply experiences the moment. Then a resonant, tense voice interrupts. The host remained unaware that she was about to encounter a moment that would not merely question her perspective on spirituality, but potentially transform her entire existence. Leonardo DiCaprio represents more than Hollywood stardom. He embodies someone who has endured complete loss, yet continues to stand firm. Not through celebrity, not through personal resilience, but through something that became the target of mockery that evening: faith. Continue watching to discover how this narrative unfolds. And before we proceed, please share in the comments section. From which part of the world are you viewing this? We appreciate hearing from you and read every single comment. The television studio was illuminated like a combat arena. Lights crisscrossed overhead, reflecting against polished ebony walls. The audience members applauded enthusiastically, buzzing with expectation, as if awaiting a comedic performance, a controversial moment, or perhaps both simultaneously. The program had built its reputation on these elements: controversy, sarcasm, and interviews that resembled verbal confrontations more than conversations. The presenter strode onto the stage. The audience exploded with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us tonight is an actor, producer, motorcycle enthusiast, living legend, and apparently something of a spiritual devotee as well. Please welcome, with tremendous applause, the man, the legend, Leonardo DiCaprio. The cheers reached deafening levels. Leonardo entered with measured steps, dressed in dark jeans, a black blazer, simple t-shirt, and a cross necklace hanging discreetly from his neck. This accessory stood in contrast to his otherwise understated appearance, suggesting deeper significance. He acknowledged the audience with a nod and gentle smile. Without rushing or grand gestures, he seated himself like someone who had faced numerous life challenges. This moment merely represented another. Initial questions followed predictable patterns: career trajectory, recent film projects, behind-the-scenes anecdotes. Leonardo responded thoughtfully and deliberately, maintaining a light atmosphere. The audience laughed appreciatively, but gradually, as typically occurred on this program, the tone began to shift. "Leonardo," the host said, displaying a cunning smile, "you appear grounded, perhaps even spiritually inclined. But tell me something honestly. After everything Hollywood has revealed to you, after everything life has taken from you, do you truly believe in miracles?" The audience laughed. Leonardo didn't join them. His expression remained calm yet contemplative. He didn't respond immediately. He simply absorbed the question. Silence filled the studio. "The most spiritual type of response," the host quipped. More laughter followed. Leonardo lowered his gaze momentarily, fingers gently touching his cross necklace. A subtle gesture, nearly imperceptible, yet laden with meaning. The camera zoomed slightly toward the cross. It moved gently with his hand's motion. Then he looked up, composed, direct, steady. No verbal response, only presence. The conversation progressed. Additional jokes about spirituality intermingled with ironic commentary regarding faith, dogma, and religion as emotional escapism. The audience laughed again, but something had altered in the atmosphere, a subtle disruption in the show's usual cadence. Then came a more pointed inquiry: "Do you honestly believe someone watches over you from above?" Leonardo remained silent for several seconds. The audience waited expectantly. This represented a pivotal moment. One misplaced word could transform him into an internet meme. But if his words reflected authenticity, perhaps something would transform that evening. Then he spoke, voice composed and steady, barely exceeding a whisper. If I continue standing after everything I've endured, mere luck cannot explain it. His statement landed with the impact of a stone dropped into still water. A ripple of silence spread throughout the room. The laughter ceased. Audience members exchanged glances, as if silently asking one another, "Did you experience that too?" The camera returned to the necklace. The cross now appeared weightier, more substantial, not a decorative element but a declaration of faith. The host attempted to redirect with another joke, but the resulting laughter sounded half-hearted. Something had fundamentally changed. Leonardo maintained his composure, never combative or defensive, simply observant and present. Nobody realized that during this broadcast, Leonardo's cross would transcend symbolism. It would catalyze a turning point nobody was prepared to witness. The studio lighting dimmed slightly as the discussion continued. The atmosphere had transformed since Leonardo's quiet declaration. What began as typical entertainment now hovered in an unusual space, somewhere between discomfort and introspection. The host leaned forward with a forced smile. The mood hadn't developed as she intended, but she hadn't finished yet. "So Leonardo, let's discuss religion, since we've arrived at this topic." The audience chuckled again, though less freely than before. She began speaking more animatedly, infusing sarcasm throughout her commentary. "You know what I always say," she smirked. "Religion resembles a fairy tale for people afraid of maturity. All that divine plan rhetoric, comforting, certainly. But hardly genuine." The laughter increased in volume. Several audience members applauded. Clearly, they were warming again to the familiar routine. Leonardo showed no reaction. He didn't roll his eyes or shift position. He didn't even exhale audibly. He simply held the cross again, not clutching it dramatically or making a display, just resting his fingers against it as if grounding himself. The camera captured this moment again. His body language displayed no anxiety or defensiveness, only stillness. As audience members enjoyed the jokes and verbal jabs, the screen began subtly transitioning. A narrator's voice emerged, gentle, thoughtful, distant. What viewers witnessed on stage was a man undergoing a test of faith. But what remained invisible was the journey that brought him to this moment. The screen transitioned to grainy, monochromatic images showing fragments of Leonardo's past. A funeral service, a diminutive casket, Leonardo standing beside it, dressed in black, motionless, his expression vacant. A glimpse of a hospital corridor, a blurred photograph showing him holding hands with someone outside the camera frame, a subway car years afterward. Leonardo sitting alone, gazing through the window, an unread book resting in his lap. The loss of his daughter, his partner's death, his closest friend, gone forever. Yet never did he allow bitterness to define his existence. His grief transformed into grace, his silence becoming a form of prayer. The montage paused, followed by authentic voices, testimonials, unscripted and raw. A rideshare driver, he provided a $500 tip. "I thought he'd made an error." He simply smiled and said, "You demonstrated kindness. The world requires more of that." A woman, "I encountered him at a gas station when my vehicle was overheating. He didn't merely assist, he remained for an hour. No cameras, no hurry. A fan, I was crying publicly on the street. He sat beside me as if we were acquainted. He never questioned why I cried. He simply listened." Back in the studio, the host continued speaking, attempting to provoke a reaction. She quoted biblical passages with theatrical exaggeration, mocking traditional sermon delivery. "The meek shall inherit the earth." "Well, good luck with that in Los Angeles," she laughed. The audience responded, though with diminished conviction. something felt different. The room's volume had decreased. Extended silences now punctuated the laughter. Leonardo maintained his quietude. Eventually, the host turned toward him again, now with discernible frustration in her tone. "You're genuinely not responding? Do you seriously believe someone out there watches over you?" For the first time that evening, Leonardo looked directly at her. His gaze contained no harshness, only depth. Then he spoke. "If I remain here, if I continue standing after everything I've experienced, mere luck cannot explain it." The audience fell silent. For the second time that night, the energy dissipated, not from boredom but reverence. Even the cameras seemed to decelerate their movement. His impact stemmed not merely from what he said but how he expressed it. No theatrics, no performance, simply truth. The audience maintained absolute silence. For the first time, laughter completely ceased. But what would follow next would challenge everything people believed they understood about faith, suffering, and redemption. The audience sat in suspended quietude, the kind of silence that seems to anticipate disruption. But Leonardo spoke no further. He had no need. He remained seated, fingers still lightly touching the cross, neither concealing nor displaying it. Simply existing in the moment. The host, sensing she might have overstepped boundaries, shifted position and produced a strained chuckle. "Well, that became rather serious," she remarked, attempting to restore familiar territory. "Perhaps we should discuss stunt work or puppies or something less weighty." A few nervous laughs emerged from the crowd but quickly faded. The atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Something profound now flowed beneath the surface conversation. On screen, the narrator's voice returned. What significance lies in silent faith? In bearing pain without allowing it to become bitterness? Leonardo never preached. He never posted sermons online. But his life narrated a story. The screen transitioned to black and white flashbacks. Not from cinematic productions but authentic moments. Leonardo at a cemetery, standing solitary at his daughter's funeral. His eyes empty, hands pressed into his coat sleeves. A man hollowed by profound loss. Another flash, years afterward. A New York subway train. He sat among strangers unnoticed. Quietly hunched in a corner seat. His head tilted slightly. As if listening to something imperceptible to others. Some carry burdens alone. Not through attempted strength, but because the world no longer provides alternatives. Testimonials again filled the audio landscape. Now layered and overlapping. A film crew member, he consistently arrived early, never complained. One day he noticed my limp and offered his chair. I was merely background staff. A nurse, my mother was dying. We occupied the same hospital. He sat with us 15 minutes. Never mentioned his celebrity status, simply remained present. A man wearing a hooded sweatshirt, face digitally obscured, he financed my brother's surgical procedure. No interviews, no publicity. I discovered this only because the hospital contacted us. Back in the studio, the host smiled tensely. And leaned toward Leonardo again. People tend to romanticize suffering. They claim pain deepens us, enhances our humanity. But I believe pain remains simply pain. It doesn't increase wisdom. It merely destroys things. She laughed bitterly. Leonardo offered no interruption. He simply listened. Maintaining that steady, receptive presence, not to debate, but to witness. The host exhaled and waved dismissively. As if discarding the entire discussion. I mean, you wear a cross, that's perfectly acceptable. But you don't actually believe it holds significance? It's merely fashion, symbolic? The room waited expectantly. Leonardo slowly directed his gaze toward her. His voice remained steady but carried a quiet intensity. Previously absent. "I don't wear it as fashion," he stated. "I wear it for remembrance, forgiveness, survival." His words lacked dramatic quality. They carried the weight of experience. As if he had repeated them to himself countless times during dark moments. When nobody observed. The camera zoomed slightly toward the necklace. This time it appeared not merely as an object, but as a narrative. One the world was just beginning to comprehend. The host became silent. She opened her mouth, then closed it without speaking. The audience remained hushed. No mobile phones, no movement, no laughter. Only presence. The narrator's voice returned once more. "In a world obsessed with vocal opinions, something unsettling yet sacred exists. In someone who simply lives their convictions." Leonardo added nothing further. He simply inhaled, exhaled, maintaining space for reflection. The host cleared her throat and smiled again. But this time her expression seemed incomplete. Something was fracturing, not on stage, but within her consciousness. What nobody anticipated was that the person who most mockingly challenged him was about to reveal something. Something that would completely redirect the program's trajectory. And her own life path. The broadcast returned from commercial interruption. But the atmosphere had transformed. The studio maintained greater quietude. The audience, previously eager to laugh at anything presented, now sat wide-eyed. Heart strangely attentive. Even the lighting appeared softer. As if the cameras recognized this segment lacked scripting. The host returned to her seat. She appeared composed, though differently than before. Her smile remained visible but failed to reach her eyes. She glanced toward Leonardo, then down at her hands. One trembled slightly. She attempted to dismiss this with laughter, but her voice cracked audibly. "All right," she said, almost addressing herself. "Let's discuss something authentic." Leonardo remained motionless. He simply waited, patient, centered, prepared. The host inhaled deeply and leaned forward. Her tone had lowered, stripped of performance quality. "During childhood," she began, "I prayed nightly. I would tightly close my eyes and ask God to make me normal. I didn't understand what that meant. I simply thought, perhaps if I achieved normalcy, constant fear would cease. I wouldn't feel fundamentally wrong." The audience remained motionless. The silence no longer carried tension. It had become sacred. She continued speaking, eyes now glistening. "And I would pray, please spare me from damnation. Please accept me as I am." But nothing occurred. I continuously awaited a sign, a voice, any indication. A pause, a breath. Eventually I stopped asking. Then I began mocking everything, the prayers, religious texts, believers. I convinced myself everything represented fiction, merely security for those unable to confront reality. She laughed softly, not mockingly but brokenness evident. "Perhaps I didn't mock your faith, Leonardo. Perhaps I mocked my own pain." Leonardo regarded her gently. No judgment, no pity, only compassion. The camera captured his expression as he leaned closer. Speaking quietly. "Nobody who suffers while praying remains truly alone. Someone always hears, even without your awareness." For a moment, everything remained perfectly still. A female audience member wiped away tears. Another held her breath. The host blinked slowly. Her professional facade continuing to dissolve with each passing second. "I formerly believed silence indicated nobody listened," she whispered. "But perhaps I simply never learned to listen in return." The camera gradually zoomed outward, showing both seated figures. No spotlight, no dramatic musical accompaniment. Just two individuals, authentic and vulnerable before millions of viewers. Leonardo spoke no further words, requiring none. The host looked at him, truly looked. And nodded, almost imperceptibly. As if communicating gratitude, or perhaps acknowledgement of continued existence. The narrator's voice returned, low and contemplative. Sometimes healing's greatest challenge involves acknowledging its necessity. And sometimes the most powerful confession simply involves speaking truth. But that moment of vulnerability hardly represented conclusion. What nobody in the studio realized was that behind the scenes, something even more revealing would soon emerge. Beyond the camera's capacity to contain. Hours after broadcast completion, video segments began spreading rapidly across internet platforms. Leonardo's quiet presence. The host's voice trembling. The studio's descent into silence. Everything possessed a different quality, authenticity. Something impossible to manufacture. But behind the scenes, situations began unraveling. A secretly recorded backstage video began circulating through social media channels. Initially, it seemed inconsequential. Merely typical producer conversations. During commercial interruption. But then a voice, clear and sharp, became distinguishable. Push the god material, the voice instructed. She needs to provoke him, generate reaction. That drives clip engagement. Another voice responded. Are we certain he won't retaliate? Precisely. That improves engagement metrics. The video achieved viral status within minutes. Initially appearing as typical behind-scenes gossip, a former producer soon stepped forward. In a live online post, he addressed viewers. Visibly nervous but determined. I worked with that production for 3 years. Instructions always existed, sometimes unspoken, occasionally written, targeting faith-expressing individuals. This never represented genuine curiosity but aimed to provoke reactions, especially from spiritually inclined guests. Network executives demanded increased tension, increased engagement. He hesitated before adding. I viewed script notes for tonight's episode. They instructed her to aggressively challenge Leonardo. Screenshots followed, internal memoranda, suggested dialogue lines, jokes designed specifically to provoke, prompts constructed explicitly to ridicule. The hashtag #RespectFaith began trending within hours. What began as simple interview now resembled staged ambush. But the strategy backfired. Because Leonardo hadn't fought, shouted, or attempted victory, he had simply maintained authenticity. Additional voices joined the online discourse. Actors, musicians, individuals from diverse backgrounds. Strength exists in stillness. Faith requires no volume to maintain power. What happened to respect? This man demonstrated greater grace through silence than the entire program demonstrated throughout its duration. Even individuals without religious affiliations contributed perspectives. Not defending belief systems, but defending the right to maintain beliefs. The conversational tone had shifted. The host maintained silence temporarily, no posts, no commentary. Then, late that night, a message appeared on her social media account. Some live television moments lack scripting, they're fundamentally human. Tonight, I demonstrated humanity, and I'm still processing the implications. Comments flooded the post. Some expressed anger, others forgiveness. Many simply posed one question: why? Backstage information leaks continued. One former assistant posted. Management informed us Leonardo wouldn't create disturbance, that excessive politeness would prevent confrontation. But they failed to anticipate that his silence would communicate everything. News organizations reported the story, journalists debated implications, faith leaders offered perspectives. Psychologists appeared on morning programs analyzing emotional impacts of moral stillness in contemporary media. Even satirical programs covered the event. But with unusual reverence, admitting, something unusual occurred. That moment temporarily halted our laughter. Amid the chaos, Leonardo offered no public response. No interviews, no statements, no quotations. Posting only one item, a single image. His cross resting atop a closed book, without caption. The post received over 6 million shares within 24 hours. People offered personal interpretations in comment sections. For quiet warriors. Faith under attack, the book closes, but the message continues. During subsequent days, conversation only expanded. Opinion pieces emerged from various perspectives. Some praised Leonardo's composure. Others criticized the program's ethical standards. Many explored deeper cultural hunger for meaning in a world frequently mocking belief. The host eventually participated in an interview with another network. She appeared exhausted, stripped of glamour, her voice softened. I anticipated feeling nothing, genuinely. But he avoided argument or reciprocal mockery. He simply listened, affecting me unexpectedly. What began as interview had become cultural examination. But during the next live broadcast, when Leonardo returned to the stage, something occurred that no camera, no script, no social media platform could have predicted. The network responded without hesitation. Barely 7 days after initial interview broadcast, they announced a second appearance, Leonardo DiCaprio, live again. This time, promotional material differed. No sarcasm, no catchy slogans. Simply promising conversation that had moved society. When the evening arrived, the studio reached capacity. Lines extended around the building. People displayed signs, not protesting but affirming presence. Silence speaks. Faith isn't flawed. More Leonardo, less noise. Inside, energy felt electric, different from before. Where everyone anticipated laughter. Now something significant seemed imminent. A collective breath held in anticipation. Leonardo entered the studio identically to his previous appearance. Quietly. Calm. Wearing the same cross necklace. The host greeted him, visibly anxious. Her tone gentler, measured, vulnerability evident in her voice. Leonardo, she began. Thank you for returning. He nodded, offering slight smile. Thank you for inviting me. She began with gentle inquiry. Something regarding his feelings following the previous interview. But before he could respond, something unusual occurred. The lights flickered, not subtle dimming. A sudden, sharp pulse. The monitors behind them malfunctioned momentarily. The audience gasped quietly. A sound technician leaned forward in the control booth. Before complete silence descended. The microphones deactivated. The lights dimmed nearly to darkness. The studio's ambient sound vanished. For 10 complete seconds, the entire set experienced stillness. So absolute it seemed otherworldly. Leonardo remained motionless. He sat, hands gently resting upon his lap. The cross visible beneath emergency lighting's soft glow. The host observed him, frozen in place. Nobody in the audience moved. Nobody spoke. Even crew members appeared uncertain whether intervention was appropriate. Then, everything returned to normal operation. Lights stabilized, sound resumed, screens refreshed. But something had fundamentally changed. The host sat in stunned silence. Her eyes filled with tears, not from fear but something else. Something internal. She turned toward Leonardo, voice trembling, I don't understand what just happened. Leonardo regarded her with quiet certainty. It never concerned winning debates, he said softly. It concerned touching souls. And momentarily, the world seemed to pause again. The audience didn't applaud. They didn't vocalize. They simply shared the moment, with him, with her, with themselves. It seemed as if, for one breath in time, every individual in that room recollected something previously forgotten: stillness, presence, reverence. The narrator's voice returned. Certain moments defy logical explanation. Moments science might label as malfunction, coincidence, technical anomaly. But what if it represented none of these? What if, for one heartbeat of time, the world acknowledged something unseen? Later, technical staff would attribute the silence to system reboot, electrical surge, studio equipment failure. But nobody truly accepted these explanations. Not after witnessing her expression. Not after observing Leonardo's composed demeanor. As if anticipating the occurrence. Not after experiencing the moment. That segment, 10 seconds of darkness, followed by 10 seconds of silence, would become the most viewed moment in program history. Not because anything was spoken, but because everything was felt. That moment, appearing as mere technical malfunction, would become one of the most replayed, analyzed, and deeply personal videos ever shared online. And Leonardo's subsequent actions would reach even the most hardened hearts. The silent video segment, that 10-second pause during live broadcast, proliferated across internet platforms. It appeared everywhere. Talk shows replayed it repeatedly. Analysts examined it in slow motion. Podcasts transformed it into metaphor. Some claimed technical malfunction, others asserted divine intervention. But one undeniable fact remained. It had transformed people. Millions watched repeatedly. Not to comprehend the occurrence, but to re-experience its emotional impact. That unusual stillness, that inexplicable peace. In an endlessly communicating world, it had communicated more than any argument could achieve. Leonardo issued no statement. He avoided interviews. He offered no explanation. He simply posted one photograph, a wooden table. A well-worn book closed on its surface. His cross resting gently upon it. The caption read, "Sometimes silence represents the most powerful response." It required no trending status. It needed no hashtags. It found natural passage into people's hearts. The host posted her own message one day later. No cosmetics, no special lighting, just her authentic self. Looking directly into her phone camera. Her voice sounded clear, gentler. "I didn't understand my actions that night. I believed I maintained control. I thought victory represented the objective, but he never attempted to win. He simply held space." A pause. And perhaps, just possibly, God did speak to me that night. I finally stopped laughing long enough to listen. The internet community didn't reject her. Surprisingly, they embraced her. Because people recognized something in her vulnerability. Not weakness, not disgrace, but authenticity. A moment reflecting something within themselves. Shortly afterward, a movement began. The hashtag #MyFaithIsNotAfault flooded social media. Not protesting or arguing, but testifying. People of all beliefs and none. Stories emerged continuously. A woman wrote, "I stopped wearing my religious necklace after ridicule from a friend. I've now replaced it." A teenager. "I never believed in anything. But perhaps I can begin believing in peace." A Brazilian man. "My mother always prayed for me. I consistently dismissed her. Today, I expressed gratitude." Churches, mosques, synagogues, and meditation communities all shared identical phrasing. Faith requires no volume. Meanwhile, news networks invited specialists. Some attempted to explain the silence technically. Voltage fluctuation. Software error. But others explored deeper implications. One neurologist stated. The body responds to that footage similarly to sacred music responses. Decreased heart rate. Reduced stress hormones. That occurrence affected people physiologically. A therapist observed. We've grown unaccustomed to people maintaining space without conflict. That moment represented reset. Emotionally. Culturally. The issue no longer involved agreement or disagreement. It involved remembering something collectively forgotten, that grace, presence, and truth require no volume. Back at the studio, the host withdrew from the program. No controversy. No headlines. She simply posted. Some conversations transcend content importance. Thank you, Leonardo. He offered no public reply. But one day later, a photograph appeared. A candle illuminated. Beside a folded note stating simply, "You were heard." The narrator offered final reflection. Leonardo DiCaprio never attempted preaching. He avoided argument. He never raised his voice. He carried pain without weaponizing it. And in a world addicted to noise, he reminded us, faith represents no weakness, and silence can be sacred. As final scenes played, a montage began. A hospitalized child watching the clip, whispering. That represents calmness. A father embracing his daughter at an airport. Both wearing crosses. Strangers gathered on a rooftop in silence. Mobile devices deactivated, simply breathing together. And finally, Leonardo, walking solitary through a quiet park. Sunset rays behind him. The cross resting gently against his chest. Perhaps this narrative never concerned television. Perhaps it never concerned Leonardo himself. Perhaps this represented the awakening of something. Within all humanity, faith. Requiring no volume to be heard. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoy this video and learned a lesson. I would be grateful for your likes. Also don't forget to subscribe and comment on the video. See you soon.